Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of Zero to Hero Community Microsoft Learn. And this is another Saturday, and we have another experts here together. This is Saidal together with Mohsen Akhavan and Hamid Sadiq Saleh, community leaders. Mohsen, Hamid, if you have something to share, please say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening from everywhere, and nice to meet you to another session with Zero to Hero, and actually with Magnus, nice expert.
Hamid.
Neat.
Yes, happy to be here again, having another session. Thanks for watching wherever the world you are. So excited to kick off the session.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to share the default 3 slides that we have. So today we have a special guest that I cannot stop admiring him, and we are going to learn a lot of good things from him. So get ready for that. Beside that, if you haven't joined us yet, aka.ms/join zero to hero, we are waiting for you. We are going to share a lot of good things there. And as usual, where is Microsoft Learn? So Microsoft Learn is the richest place that you can be connect and learn a lot from the other experts, and also you are able to share your knowledge with rest of learners. And it's a great opportunity if you want to be part of a big community that you can learn a lot from a lot of other people. So if you want to join Microsoft Learn community, aka.ms/Microsoft Learn community. Beside that, we are in AI Skills Challenge weeks. So make sure that you have registered in Microsoft Learn AI Skills Challenge, aka.ms/AI Skills Challenge. And it's a great opportunity for you to learn about AI and AI things and Microsoft AI with different challenges. And also, we expected you to be aware of others, be friendly and patient, be welcoming and respectful, be open to all questions and viewpoints, be understanding of differences, and be kind and considerate to others. So, with that said, warm welcome to Magnus Mårtensson. Thank
Hello
you so
there.
much that you are here, Magnus.
Well, I mean, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a lovely Saturday evening here in Sweden. It's starting to get a little dark outside, but we're going towards more summer times, more light, and that's lovely. It's been dark for a while up here in the north.
Yeah. You're waiting for heaven in Sweden, right?
Right. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm gonna do one of my favorite things for a while here, which is I get to talk to you people for a bit. Kind of a one-way street though with this variety. My audience is there. You're like a small black dot on my wall. That's okay. I prefer a live audience where it's much more interactive, but this is good too. At least I get to talk about my favorite topic in the world, which is Azure. Of course, I mean professionally, my favorite topic. I can talk about chilies for a long time.
Oh,
That's not my hobby, so that's a different conversation. But this is going to be lovely. And then after that, and after when we're all done, then it's Saturday night.
Yeah, amazing. Magnus, before you kick off this session and start the presentation, I have a question. You were in MVP Summit for almost one week. So I believe we have to wait for a lot of good news, right?
Yeah.
So can you share like not NDA parts and interesting things with us in like a minute?
I did a really cool photo. I'm going to show you that photo right now, just because you said NDA. I might have to scroll here for a bit. Let's see if I can find it. Yes, I got it here. So I did like a thug. I did this photo. I took a picture of that "Don't take a picture" sign.
Yeah.
Very naughty. Very naughty.
That's not NDA.
NDA. Yes, of course. I cannot obviously not share anything about the content as such, but I can share about the MVP Summit and what we do there, and it is absolutely amazing. And it is quite nice to be an MVP because you get to go to Microsoft, you get to see these people and hang out in their like backyard. Quite literally, even we were at someone's home as well having dinner. Now, some people would go to the MVP Summit for the content and focus in on that. And of course, I go to lots of the content. You talk directly with engineers and program managers who build the services in the Azure platform, which is such a treat. But for me, additionally, the thing we call the hallway track, just networking, meeting up with people outside in the halls, talking to them, getting to know one another. And then, of course, there's like that goes into the evenings in and around Bellevue and Redmond and a little bit Seattle. That's when you really get to know people more on a personal level. So after having been an MVP now for quite some time, actually, that's part of my presentation. Having been an MVP for some time, I can tell you that it's amazing that like there are some people here that I've known and cared about for like 10, 12 years now. And it's lovely to come back and see them every once a year.
True. Yeah, amazing. Okay, perfect. So yeah, the stage is yours. We are going to backstage, and please amaze us with the content.
Thank you. I'll try to amaze you. I'll do my very best. Okay, then. All right, it's only me now. Wonderful. And there's the presentation. Fantastic. All right, cool. Let me just do one more thing here. I'm going to, take that away from the screen. Whee, over here. I do that because I want to make sure that I have a good frame set up for my talk on my screen. So I see everything correctly. Okay, brilliant. I do that now. So, people, this is a, for me, interesting session, and I hope that you will enjoy it as well. It's a lot about me just sharing a bunch of things and experiences that I have collected over the years, and kind of as a cautionary tale or as a word of warning, this is just random advice from me that I have collected and turned into a session. I was curious, wondering, can that actually become a session? I don't know, but it's just me ranting. It's just Magnus saying things about Azure. But it turns out that there's a lot of substance there. There's a lot of things that I have seen over many years that actually can turn into just a list of things to remember, check off this, do that. And as such, I hope and I think that it actually is rather useful. So I hope that you like it. But as Baz Luhrmann really did say, he said, be careful whose advice you buy, be patient with those who supply it. Advice is a form of nostalgia. Dispensing it is a way of fishing the past from the disposal, wiping it off, painting over the ugly parts, and recycling it for more than it's worth. And I think those are beautiful lines to live by. You can try to give advice, but it's up to you, audience, listener, to be patient with it and derive any value you can or cannot from this thing that is called my session. So I also want to mention that this talk, it is cloud technology adjacent, right? It's not about cloud technology, this talk. It is about the focus on the other things, the preparations, the things you need to align and figure out before you go and spend a lot of money on the cloud, okay? And one central piece or thing that I will refer to throughout this talk is a big body of work by Microsoft called the Cloud Adoption Framework. And many of you out there who are watching this may, of course, have seen the Cloud Adoption Framework at many times. Now, if you looked into this thing, you'll know that it is many hundreds of pages of markdown. It is thousands of images. This is a massive piece. And it's a good backdrop for this talk. It is a good reference. There's nothing wrong with this at all. I enjoy this so much. And I use it as a reference point. It's a very big body of work, though, and it has some eccentricities and some things that we need to consider, or at least be aware of. The first thing that shows up is that it has this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on and so forth, right? You just follow the numbers and success, right? You follow the numbers to the goal and cloud success, it's here. Fantastic. This is not always the case, though, that it's such a straight line or, follow the numbers. It's not really reality. after having understood a bit more, maybe your strategy has to change. After having thought you were ready to migrate a bunch of things, you realize that your governance is not where it needs to be. So it jumps back and forth, really. It's not such a straight line. And what we need to talk about and also understand is that many companies, not saying you, many companies actually go towards the cloud without any real strategy, to be honest. It's just, we're going to the cloud now because other people do that, so we need to do that too, or something like that. And another honest disclosure is that many do it also pretty much without a plan. You just, okay, we're going to prepare the cloud environment now and migrate to the cloud, and we're going to do things there technically in the cloud, yay. Basically, that's it. And there are some issues with this approach, of course, obviously. Why else would I have this session? So I'm going to focus today on the other parts that are not so technical of this picture here. So let's talk about the strategy. What things do you need to consider when you are creating a strategy for going to the cloud? How do you really make a plan? Like, are there some advice and some thoughts, some pitfalls, things that I have seen in making a plan that are very important? Another thing that is really, really interesting is that this whole plan, strategy, process, ready, adopt thing, it does actually talk about people, but like a comma at the end, comma people and comma process, which is so backwards, which is so horrifying, because this picture, my biggest critique, and I've told Microsoft on multiple occasions, you do not emphasize the people and the organizational change, the process enough. And that causes problem because people think it's just the same. It's like IT. We used to do IT all the time, and now we're doing IT again, except in the cloud now. And they think it's the same, or they don't know that it isn't. It's not exactly the same anymore. This is a big problem. So with these 3 items in focus, or maybe 3 or 4, that I want to talk about how to really get ready for the cloud. And this is where the title of my talk came from, the 4 things that you have to do before you do technical things in the cloud, right? So adopt, migrate, innovate. Now the tech starts. Now you're doing technical things in the cloud, and then you have to govern and manage these like forever, right? So those things are the really technical things, except you have to do the other things much more, or even at all, or better than you do already. I've seen many times that this is so-so. People are not prepared for the change. And that's a shame. That's what we're talking about today. Then you can adopt, right? So essentially, I say, now it's 3 things again, but essentially I say that if you have a good strategy, a plan, and an organization around the cloud, then you have a chance. Then you have a chance to actually adopt the cloud in a proper way, and your effect will be so much the better. So everything was fine, and then people, right? That's how it usually goes. So technology may be advanced, right? But it's commonly quite straightforward. However, humans are never straightforward, right? They're never straightforward. So again, back to who am I? Just real quick, so you know the context. I am Magnus Mårtensson, and I have I run my own company as an independent Azure expert, and I've been an Azure MVP since the beginning of the cloud. I was the first person to become an Azure MVP in the Nordic countries, and I have been an Azure MVP now for over 12 years. And when you have been, that's when you get one of these things with lots of numbers around this area here. 1 disk per year, and that's what happens when you have done this for a bit. So I've been around the cloud since the start, and therefore I have some perspective at this point, right? Another fun thing is that I'm also a Microsoft Regional Director, or RD, which the standard phrase is that I don't work for Microsoft. Okay, I sound like I do sometimes, but I don't work for Microsoft. I don't have a region, and I don't direct anything, right? So it's a strange title to have, but it means that I'm very close with Microsoft, and I hang out with them all the time, and I do things together with Microsoft. I give feedback to Microsoft at a VP corporate level. And that's a really, really good conversation to have with Microsoft. So Global Azure. Global Azure is coming up in April 18 through 20. We're getting close, we're getting down to the wire, but it's still completely possible to join this effort, which is to just simply run a community meetup event during these days and put your pin down on the map. Anyone can do that with your community. That will give you access to some of the sponsorships that we have collected. We have the Azure passes from Microsoft. We have licenses and various other digital giveaways from other sponsors. And hundreds of organizers are organizing events around the globe, Global Azure, on these dates. And thousands of people are attending to learn about Azure during these dates. Cool. Take a look at that. That's fun. So I'm sure that a lot of you out there have a lot of experience with cloud. And if you're listening in now and say, I've done the cloud for a long time, I know some stuff. And this is not to say that I'm better at this than anyone at all. It's not even interested. And this comes from an expression in the U.S. military. That's not what you think it is. It's mud, but there isn't an emoji for mud. So I use that other one instead. But it's the military expression is the same mud, same blood. I'm sure that a lot of you out there have a lot of experiences of the cloud as well. Fortunately, we can't interact very much. But anyway, we'll just let me talk instead this time. So when you want to migrate to the cloud, then, and every self-respecting presentation should always have Clippy, by the way, it's important. When you migrate to the cloud, there's a lot of material you can lean on. I already mentioned the Cloud Adoption Framework, and then there is the well-architected framework, which is another huge Microsoft asset with lots of architectures that you can review and learn from and see, okay, they were building this kind of application, and so they used these things in Azure, and here's how they put that together. And then there is also the big Azure Architecture Center, which is another big body of work and material that you can lean on. So with all of this, CAF and WAF and I don't even know ACC, there's so many things, and you really have to understand like where to focus. How do you even proceed from here with all of this material? It feels daunting. Let's just get going, go to the cloud, and if all else fail, you could also go to war. And what do you mean, Magnus? Well, I'm just joking, because there's something called a well-architected review. And I don't think that Microsoft actually uses that acronym, but maybe that's a missed opportunity. I don't know. But under Microsoft Learn Assess/assessments, there are plenty of assessments. There you see the well-architected review there at the top, Azure well-architected review. You can, do all kinds of assessments on your Azure stuff that you have and figure out kind of well in advance, where are we with things? Maybe sustainability is super important to you. And there's an assessment for sustainability. For 30 minutes, sit down, go through the assessment, try to answer the questions and figure out, get a score where you are and where you thought maybe you're somewhere that you didn't think you were. Maybe there are some resources now based on this assessment that you can learn more about the thing that matters to you. I really like that one down to the bottom left. There it says Strategic Migration Assessment and Readiness Tool, or SMART. Very smart. Anyway, I like that, but it's 15 minutes. So, I'm going to migrate a bunch of things to Azure. I think I can spare, that's going to cost me millions. I think I can spare 15 minutes to sit down and go through this assessment and see if there are any resources that I need to know about. Because that's sort of the outcome of this thing. It is that you get on a scale from red to green on different topics, right? So if you're red in a certain topic, this contrived example here is red on cost optimization. So as an organization, before we start going to the cloud, maybe we should look into learning more about cost optimization so that we don't end up in a really bad place where our costs are running amok and we don't know why, right? That's actually a really good place to start. Go through some of these assessments that, the ones that interest you or make sense to you, and get some references, get some understanding maybe superficial, maybe shallow understanding, but still, like, where are things that we don't know that we need to understand? If we're going to the cloud with millions of money, we better be ready. And this is a good place to start, good as any. So that's so much for intros, right? For the rest of this talk, and I wish we could talk now, not just me doing a monologue. If there are any questions from the audience, you let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. But this is a one-way street mostly for today. So, if you want to create a strategy according to the cloud adoption framework, a strategy for going to the cloud, all you need to do is define and document your motivations, document business outcomes, or as I like to call it, what are we actually measuring here? Evaluate financial considerations and understand technical considerations. That's it. Seems easy to me. Okay, except most people actually don't do that much before they start with the cloud. Another important thing to consider is to find out who is the sponsor. If the company that you are with is going to the cloud, and it sounds funny still in my brain for someone like me who has been in the cloud doing cloud stuff for a decade, or more, actually more than a decade, a dozen years or more, that there are companies out there that haven't done anything in the cloud. It's weird. To me, that's what? Seriously? But now I find myself working currently with public sector, for example. I am advising public sector customers about the cloud, and they have never touched it. They've never done anything. Now, when you start to go, who are your friends in the leadership? Who are with you on this journey? That's so key to understand. And maybe even more important is to find out who are against, who do not want to see this cloudy thingy. There are some serious people in any organization of a size that might be not so ecstatic about the cloud, right? We need to think about that. So I'm going to tell you this in the form of a story, a brief story. So once upon a time, a company was going to the cloud, and the CIO, the COO, and some people got together and put their heads together and were like, yay, we have this plan. We're going to the cloud. And they went in front of they collected, the town hall meeting, the whole company, everyone's there. And they're like, yay, we're going to the cloud. It's going to be so cool. And then in the front row, you see a person sitting there, and he just becomes darker and darker and darker in his eyes. And he literally during that meeting, and this is horrifying to witness, he gets up and rage quits and says, we're not going to the cloud. We have IT. And basically this was the IT manager. I don't know what their internal politics in this company was, if they had some suits, owners of the company who had made this decision and not involved. Can you imagine? Not really involved their head of IT. So weird. And he was, of course, furious with this. So I think they had some issues in the company. And so they were not strategically aligned before they went out in front of the company with this. Talk about a really strange feeling in the room, and then nobody really knew who to listen to. But effectively, this gentleman here feels a lot like, the old man yelling at the cloud. And while that is funny, at least at first glance, it's also important to remember and respect that proud IT architect or whomever it is that you have in your company that maybe has been with the company for a long time and maybe does not want to change much anymore. How do you care for that? Take care of that situation. How do you make that person feel included? How do you make him or her, probably mostly him, if you're talking older people in IT, it's highly likely him, to be honest. Not that that's a good thing, but that's just probably statistically true. How do you make them come along here? So my advice is to, of course, find the real business sponsors, identify the cheerleaders and the forerunners, but also ensure to keep your enemies closer, right? Who are against? How do you handle them or help them or, respect them and let them come along? Either reorganize them or even remove them. That's sad, but if you're any large enough organization, you're not going to have everyone coming along to the cloud. There's going to be some people that are like, yeah, I've been doing IT for 35 years and I'm just too old and too close to retirement. I don't want to do this. I don't want to learn something new and go to the cloud. Sadly, you might need to usher them along to something else, right? But if you can, hopefully include them into something important and make them feel a part of this story. So anyway, you should have a council of people who are up for this, the leadership, the lead architects. You should include everyone who is important in the IT space of your company and make sort of a council that together kind of direct what this platform team for the cloud will be doing. That's my piece of advice there. So another thing to note, and this was a piece of advice from a good friend of mine, and I was like, yeah, you are absolutely right. I'm going to take this straight into my talk, is my friend's name is Vishwas. To optimize the cloud approach, it's a question of how you look at the cloud, okay? It's not the cloud project. It's not a 3-year plan of investment. It's not like IT budget for 3 years, and they will be doing cloudy thingies with these IT budgets. That's not it. You have to start looking, or you have to look at the cloud as a continuous value stream, which will continuously bring value to the business over time. The annual IT budget thing, that's a thing of the past, and that can be a very dramatic change for an organization that have never done something like this. So with this, then you have to understand what is the business reason for going to the cloud. Why does this business want to go to the cloud? What is the purpose? And it's not we're just doing IT stuff except in the cloud now. That's a real shame when that comes up, because basically that means that some business people are making a decision that we shall be using the cloud, and then they tell technical people kind of across a wall that the technical people are over there to some other place, and we don't really talk to them, but I guess they'll be, they did technical things before, they're going to be doing technical things in the future, except in the cloud. That's not a strategy. That's not a business reason for going to the cloud. It doesn't compute. There is nothing, pun intended, right? There's nothing good about that way of going to the cloud. So adopting the cloud without clear goals is a classic anti-pattern that I have seen in many, many times, that we're going to use the cloud. So what? Like there's no plan. That's not a strategy. And also, once you try to figure out an actual strategy for going to the cloud, failure to kind of communicate it can be lethal. Let's say that you are going to the cloud because you need to save money. Cheap is the focus. We have to save money by going to the cloud. We have this huge IT investment and old servers and things. We don't want to pour a bunch of other millions into buying new hardware or whatever it is, right? So we have to go to the cloud to save money. Well, wouldn't it be really good if you actually had that extremely clearly communicated to the people who are going to do it? Yes, it would. Have I seen, multiple times when I talk to people on the, engineering department, on the engineering floor, I talk to them like, why are we doing here? Why are we doing it this way? And they're like, I don't know. They don't know the reason for going to the cloud. They don't know the strategy. The business strategy alignment is not there. So this can be a big problem. So here's a list of various business reasons. There are additional business reasons that you could have. Any business reason that makes sense for you. Reduction of capital expenses. Technology advances. We need to use AI and ML. You reduce the carbon footprint. Some want to go to the cloud because it's green. That's pretty cool. That's a thing. What is the most important? And another hint there is you can't get cheap, secure, compliant, green, and modernized at the same time. That's 5 things. It doesn't work like that. You have to actually stack rank them. You have to actually put them in an order and say, okay, first of all, we need to save money. I'm sorry, but that's just the case. We need to save money. But we have some companies, that rely on us for their security things. So security is actually very important too, right? But it's one of those things, like you can't get all the things at the same time, and you should be honest about that up front and understand that you have to put a focus, an emphasis, right? If you want to get all the things at the same time, that's going to be a very long time, and you're highly unlikely to succeed very well. It's going to cost you a lot of time. It's going to cost you, a lot of money as well, and it's not going to really be ever anything that you will achieve. Okay? Just suck it up. That's the reality. Anyone really, if you think about it, honestly, if you honestly introspect on that, you understand that that's true. So don't try to go everywhere at the same time. So Leonard Bernstein said that to achieve great things, 2 things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. And I don't know about you, every project that I have ever worked in has not really ever had enough time. So that's probably always the case. So I guess all we need now is a plan, right? So I've talked a bit about strategy. Let's talk a bit about planning. How do we start planning for cloud if we don't have enough previous experience with cloud? How do we do it? How do we really plan to go to the cloud if you don't have any cloud experts or not enough cloud experts? One thing you can do is take a look at a blog post that I wrote. It's actually a while now, August 8th, 2022. But this is, Azure Landing Zone is a part of the Cloud Adoption Framework. You need to have a landing zone, apparently. Everything needs to be a landing zone these days. What it means is subscription. We've always had those, but now we have many, many subscriptions as logical pieces of our estate. One service goes there, another service goes there in different landing zones. Cool. So a big consideration is actually which things of all our things need to go to the cloud first. Now, if your company is a smaller company, maybe you only have a few products or services, that's cool too. Then you probably don't have to make this a huge consideration. But if you are part of a larger organization, you may have tens or dozens, hundreds of servers with many, many, many applications. Then you really need to think about, if we're moving things to the cloud, which goes first? And so you can take a look at my blog post there. I put up these, various topics that you need to consider when selecting your first applications to go to the cloud. How complex are they? What kind of skills do you have in the teams that are going to migrate? What's the business value of doing this migration? Because I advise that you actually have some real business value in the first projects that you move to the cloud so that it matters for the business. Otherwise, it's just a curiosity. Some technical people are doing something. I'm not even listening. If it's got business value now, if you're moving something with actual business value, like your shopping cart or something that business people care about, now you have their attention. And that's a really good piece of advice. So to make the first start into the cloud, when you are actually migrating, this is part of your planning, right? So your planning needs to include the consideration moving some applications, plural too, to the cloud as like the first ones to start actually using the cloud. My advice is to use 2, because oftentimes these advice that you read is that you should have a forerunner. You should have one project that you start with. Well, I've actually seen that done. They did that at a customer case. They used one project as an example, and then after like 3 months of doing something towards the cloud with that project, it turned out to be like, okay, we don't know what to conclude from this, that this doesn't really have an outcome that we understand. Which is why if one fails, you should have a backup. You should have at least 2 projects to begin with. And you need to define a measurable outcome. And I cannot stress that enough. Something measurable. I don't know exactly what that is. It's going to vary, but it should be something that you can actually measure. When you're using a cloud platform, you consume resources in that cloud platform, right? You deploy applications, web applications, you use databases and a bunch of other resources, and they're going to cost you real money. So you are always being measured by your cloud provider. If it's Azure, Microsoft is measuring every little bit and byte that you consume, and they give you a really solid bill at the end of the month. So my advice is that you have to also measure yourself. And therefore, you have to understand how to measure in the cloud. So performance monitor and log files and things like that you had, before, counters and things, they work differently in the cloud. In the cloud, we have something called the Azure Monitor. So Azure Monitor is this umbrella thing. It's pretty big. It's a pretty huge umbrella. There's lots of things in there. I advise you to learn about Azure Monitor before you even attempt to go to the cloud, because there is something you have to do before you move anything to the cloud, and that is to understand how to measure it. So a hot strategy tip is that you need to show the business the value of the cloud. So the business need to understand this. So you should agree first on some business aligned metrics, whatever that is, number of users, how many items checked out, or performance something, cost something, anything that is important to the business. Put up measurements for that. So it could be money. It's kind of money, okay, fine. But something, business gains wise that moves the needle for these people. And then put technical measurements in place for these people on day 0. So you want to create like a dashboard for these Excel people, muggles, non-magical folks, people who don't understand tech, right? Bean counters, right? You have to put something in place for them that makes them want to look at what you're doing at all. Otherwise, you're going to have that situation that, technical people are doing some technical things, and I guess they'll tell us at some point when the application is ready. That just means that they think that they can go and play golf or paddle or something, and technical people will be doing things while they do that. That's not good enough. We need to have something, right? So if you have a business goal in mind, you can measure it. Then the next question comes back again, right? Can everyone in the company know what the target is? And if you are not thinking right now, stay on target, I'm sorry, we can't be friends, right? So you have to know what the target is that you are going to hit. Because if the target is not clear, then how can you possibly hit the target, right? Is it money? Is it security? Is it compliance? What is important for this business? And if you know that as technical people, then you can focus on that target. Stay on target. So I spoke with a friend of mine. I also have this little show. It's just a little itty bitty show called The Cloud Show, a live show where I have interesting conversations with good, strong technical leaders and also people who are not working in tech. I mean, they're working close to tech. They work near tech, like Miri Rodriguez. She's an amazing brand storytelling person, and she works at Microsoft with brand storytelling. And she said that, storytelling is not just a way, it is the only way to make all of your company move in the same to the same cloud solution for your business, to move in the same direction. You have to tell the story about your brand. Why are we going to the cloud? Why are we doing this? So that everyone understands. And she also has a great book plug, yay. A very, very nice book, Brand Storytelling, that you should get and you should read, and it's awesome. So you should get to a point where all the employees can recite the business goal. So basically a little bit like Thumper here, who is reciting what his father says, right? My daddy says that, and he kind of strikes this little pose, and he tells the story of eating greens and how you should eat the green stuff, and it's very important. So the cloud business plan is, right, but everyone knows that the flowers is the best part, according to Thumper, right? And in tech, of course, everyone obviously knows that the flowers, that's Kubernetes. And I hope that you laughed from that, because that's a joke. Everybody thinks that Kubernetes is the answer. What is the question? I don't know, but Kubernetes is the answer. Anyway, moving on. So approaching the cloud approach at scale, it's hard to do. So the reason why it's hard is that you are running services in a cloud platform now. And it means that you have new management and operational services and new paradigms that you have to grasp and understand that are not the same as before. Problem with this is that you have your on-premises teams and they are not yet skilled up to cloud. You don't have enough people with enough skills to use the cloud. And they are also quite busy running the on-premises services and operations, because actually that's what pays the bills, right? This cloud thing is just an exploration to another place that we're going to go to. It actually doesn't make money right now. We're investing time in this, and it's starting to cost Azure money of some kind. Like there are consuming resources somewhere, but all of our customers are over here. So we still have to like maintain that. That's very important. But we want to go to the cloud, but over here, we're getting split focus now. So we also don't have time really to properly upskill, to govern, and to upskill to operations in the cloud. And if we don't have enough people and we don't have time to upskill them, somehow we just have to push this through and go to the cloud anyway, right? And you know, it'll be fine, because technical people were doing technical things before, and technical people will be doing technical things again in the cloud now. So how bad could that be? Turns out pretty bad. So it's the people. It really is about people. And how do you go to the cloud? How do you do it? So take a look at Cloud Adoption Framework again, and the link at the bottom of the screen, I took a screenshot. If you look at the Cloud Adoption Framework again, and try to look for organization on the front page, you find like, oh, wait, there's something there, organizational management. Okay, click initial organizational alignment in the Cloud Adoption Framework /plan. Okay, so I need to plan for organizational alignment. Scrolling, map people to capabilities, evolving your organizational structure, yada, yada, seems good. And way down there, there's a link, organize, cool, click. Oh, I see now. Turns out the Cloud Adoption Framework has this whole other section, this top level section called Organize. Who knew? And it comes back to exactly what I said before. We're not talking about the organizational change as a thing you have to talk about first of all, which is actually the case. You have to start talking about that. Otherwise, you're going to miss it. You're not going to have your organization with you when you go to the cloud. And at this point, I always like to mention the wonderful business fable. Many of you, it's called it's described as a motivational business fable, talking about business in fact, but it applies to tech and most other things as well. I think you've heard the expression, "Who moved my cheese?" This is a book that describes the woes, the pains of organizational change through these four characters, Sniff, Scurry, Hem, and Haw, that have different attitudes in relation to this organizational change, or this change that they are faced with. I'm not going to linger too long on this topic here, but essentially they live in a labyrinth and they have a bunch of cheese to eat, and then one day somebody moves their cheese. Maybe they take the cheese from the ground and they move it to the cloud. Who knows, right? The cheese is elsewhere. And Sniff and Scurry, they go out into the labyrinth, try to find the cheese. Haw is kind of like, oh my God, what is happening? I don't know. And Hem is like really angry and disgruntled at everything and really, really annoyed. So this is a very interesting book to review if you are making a large organizational change, which going to the cloud really is. Because there's a risk about going to the cloud without the right skills, without enough skills. And it's because people are afraid of change. Change is a killer, right? As a biological entity, we are reluctant to change because the known is safe and something new is dangerous. This new mushroom that we found, if I eat it, will it kill me or will it actually be delicious? I don't know. So we'll have to approach this very carefully. So we don't like change. And the same can be said, like if you're moving servers from the ground to the cloud, the same can be right here with that change. And the expression compound losses is just an expression to explain that there is a risk that we do the same thing that we did before. We knew how to do IT. We've known how to do IT for decades. Our company is big. We have done IT for many decades. We know IT. Except now we go to the cloud, and there's a real risk that we treat the cloud in the same way exactly as we did. We did IT before, we do IT now, except in the cloud. And that's going to go horribly wrong. It is not the same. So you need to understand that you need to have the right people involved. And so there is a strategy anti-pattern here as well. And you notice now that I'm jumping back and forth, plan, organization, strategy, like I showed with the arrows, right? They go every which way. One thing involves the other and affects the next and so on, right? You have to understand that you need to have the right people involved. The right people need to be there to make the proper decisions on this journey, which is going to the cloud. Because, and I think I've hammered this in quite a lot during this talk already, that the cloud is commonly mistaken for being primarily a technical challenge. It is not primarily a technical challenge. The cloud is in fact primarily a strategic business bother on top of a human capital confrontation. Working with tech, that's just a bonus, okay? And I'm actually quoting myself on this because I was having a conversation with some people and we arrived at this thing that tech is just a bonus. I like tech, but that's not the problem. The challenge, tech is easy compared to changing people, you know? Here's an example of this that I want to show. This is not a huge company, and it's not the biggest potential, saving that I have seen. This is the Azure Advisor. If you have an Azure consumption, you can click on something called the Azure Advisor, and you will see, some recommendations on things you should be doing or could consider to maybe save cost, for example. And here's a 500,000 Danish crowns. Not the biggest. That's about 50,000 euros or something, right? Or thereabouts. Not the biggest saving ever, but it's still, depending on the size of your company, that can be significant. So you see here that it says buy virtual machine reserved instances. So clearly this company is using virtual machines in the cloud. Cool. So if you buy reserved instances, you can save money. It's like 300K there. That's a lot of money. They have 48 virtual machines. Cool. Save money sounds good. How do you activate reserved instances in the cloud? Technically, this is very easy. Next, finish, except basically it's super easy to do. But before you take, you're going to pre-allocate, you're going to pay for these virtual machines in advance for a year's consumption or for 3 years, depending on how much discount you want. So maybe before I take this large chunk of money from the budget, from the cloud budget that we have, maybe I should check with management. So, dear management, should we be optimizing our infrastructure as service spend? Should we optimize our VM cost? Or should we maybe consider moving some of the applications away from VMs and deploying them to a cloud service, Kubernetes, or to an app service, or to anything else? And maybe move the databases from servers to the database service. How do we modernize our things so that we are not using VMs anymore? Or maybe if there's just a SaaS solution, we can just buy that, but that's a sort of in parentheses there. So this thing that looks like a very easy thing to do, next, finish, and we've saved hundreds of thousands, is actually not very easy at all. Because how much time do we want to have these VMs for? Is it 1 year or 3 years? Or I don't know. And do we have enough skilled people to understand how to operate? Because we know how to run VMs. We've done that for decades. But do we actually know how to use platform services, app services, and other things? Do we actually know how to do that? Do we have the skills for that? This is a much more complicated conversation. And that takes you back to exactly the same point where we were before. It takes you back to the confrontation internally. I don't want to use server. Where's the VM, right? Literally, I've had people ask me in this organization that I work with, okay, cool, we now have access to Azure. We now have the landing zone. How do we order a VM? That's the actual question. How do we order a VM? Now, while I could show them how to set up a VM in Azure, maybe that's not the answer they're actually looking for, but they don't know how to ask the question. And that's not their fault. They're not bad people. They're great people. They might be super cool, awesome people with a long IT experience, but they don't really know how to ask the question. So if you're migrating VMs to the cloud, here's a tip. Don't. This is my very good friend Mustafa. Now, he didn't only say don't, he actually said more things, but I think his first, he said don't, and then he made a pause, and I thought that was hilarious. Don't go to the cloud with your VMs. But if you have hundreds of them, you still have a problem, right? You still might need to, and that's fair, because it's not easy to actually migrate every VM or just migrate every application and leave all the VMs behind. That might take time for you, and maybe you're not ready for that. Right sizing and what do we need to do? This can become expensive really fast. So actually, the thing is to note here is that it's entirely possible to move to the cloud and miss out of most of the benefits. If you just treat the cloud the same as before, IT there, equal in between, you're missing out. You're not going to have the best cloud. It's not going to be optimized. It's not going to be agile. It's not going to be all the things that you wanted. All the things that the cloud promised are not going to be within reach for you as an organization. And a lot of people don't realize that, and don't, especially if they're less technical, they don't understand the difference between running an application on a VM on their own servers or running an application on a platform service in the cloud with auto scaling and various things. They don't see the difference. And it's hard to explain that to a muggle. So when you, if you are moving VMs to the cloud, if you can, please create, in that case, a new VM in the cloud and deploy your application to that new VM, because otherwise you'll also be taking, if you take that image of that VM and upload the image to the cloud and boot it up, it's going to run, right? But you're taking the application with you. That's what you wanted. But you're also taking with you all the old things that were on that server that, this server has been running for years. And at some point, Dave thought it was a cool idea to install whatever software and stuff. Now you're taking all that crap with you to the cloud as well. If you can avoid that, that's a cool thing to try to avoid. But again, if you're migrating hundreds of VMs, you might not have that luxury. It does depend on who you are, but it's a fair tip. Cool. So the failure to focus on skilling may end up running the new cloud in the old way. And here's a really, really good picture that shows this so well. This is a State of the Cloud report by a company called Flexera, and they list the top challenges in the cloud according to cloud users. So managing software licenses, I don't know about you, but that kind of, I need to go take a shower. I don't want to talk about software licenses. Personally, not my favorite topic. There are some people who like that, but those are strange people. So let's strike that one. What are we left with? Security, spend, governance, and compliance. So these are the top challenges of the cloud, and the one that is remaining up there, the second most important one, is lack of resources and expertise. So one could argue that if we only had enough resources and expertise, we could probably take care of security, spend, governance, and compliance. The problem is we don't. So that is why everyone, please understand that when you have suits in a room, business people, trying to come up with a cloud business strategy for the company, the most important person in that meeting is the human resource director. It's HR. That's the most important. Changing your people, aligning their skills, and aligning your organization is entirely key to success. Without that, or neglecting to focus on that, you will never succeed in the cloud. Period. You will be frustrated, angry, and you will spend too much and it'll take too long, and the outcome will not be what you wanted. That's just the truth. It's just, I've seen it so many times. Please, it is true. So if you look in under the Cloud Adoption Framework organization stuff, you get all these functions, Microsoft call them, that you need to hit. You need to understand about all these things. when you go to the cloud. Maybe not at everything at once, because that's also going to be a daunting challenge. But there are so many things. And again, just to understand, if somebody like a presenter shows you a long list of things, it's not for you to like read and memorize. You can go to the Cloud Adoption Framework and look at these after this session. It's not for you to memorize. It's just for you to understand that there's a lot. Okay. And Microsoft has this wonderful picture in the organization section. If I blur out the little text there, just to see, like you move like towards something, right? You're going towards a thing at the end, and at the end, everybody gets a cloud center of excellence. I don't know if you've heard about that term, the cloud center of excellence. So organizationally, a cloud center of excellence is a pretty big beast. That requires a lot from you, very much. And don't think that you can just get that, because you can't just get it. You have to work really hard in that direction. And then maybe you want to call it a cloud center of excellence. But I've actually heard some people be annoyed with the term, and that because they've had bad experiences with it, because they've had some excellent cloud people that think they're all that and think they're better than everyone else. And that can leave a bad taste. So let me just quickly suggest another approach. This is from team topologies, which I kind of like as well. And it works kind of well with maybe not so large organizations. So if you have these teams that are going to do technical things in the cloud, they are supported by a platform team. And then there are technical things that the technical expertise, if you have some really good experienced cloud people, or if you hire trainers and whatnot, they are there as a team to enable the workload teams to get better. And there's another thing, a caveat, the complicated subsystem team that I want to talk about as well. So if you have many teams that are going to the cloud, they're going to the cloud, and you have this team facilitating the change, helping them, training them, showing them, experts, guiding them. That's cool. And you probably want to have a platform team at the bottom, a cloud platform team that builds up the fundament upon which everyone else, collaborates, so that all of those function teams, all of those application teams don't have to understand how the platform works. They need to focus on their application and get support from the platform team. Off to the side, there is this X as a service thing. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'll tell you what I mean by that in the form of a story. So once upon a time, there was a, relationship status was, it's complicated. So what do I mean? So there was a planning session in this company, and they were talking about the hybrid connection. We need a hybrid connection, cloud thing. So the express route and the hybrid connection, that's delivered by a partner. And we have this partnership set up with this other supplier, and they are delivering that. And it's a little iffy there, because we're actually seeking to replace this partner. We need to go with someone else. So let's just, we're going to figure that out. We're going to get that connection. So let's just focus on the things that we can move right now, and we're going to figure that one out. And it's kind of sticky, right? And we'll take care of that, later. 10 months later, discussing with one of the workloads team, I talked to them, and they go like, okay, where's the hybrid connection? We need a hybrid connection. We need to connect to a critical data on premises, or we cannot proceed. And that's an adoption blocker. We can't go to the cloud without this hybrid connection. So what do we conclude from this little story? Well, we conclude that if something is extra sticky, extra problematic, then maybe it's a bad smell. And that's not mud anymore. That's the other thing, right? It's poo. There's a bad smell here. And maybe then consider creating what's known as a complicated subsystem team that are clearly working. They're dealing with this mess, the messy thing. They're taking that head on. That's their job. You will do this. You will deliver hybrid connection as a service. And you are responsible for progress on this. You will report on progress, and there is a timeline. Take the problem head on. You know it's there. don't defer it until it is clearly too late, and now that is an adoption blocker for your business. Just take it on straight away. I've seen this fail. This is the hybrid connection scenario, and it's a real problem. From reality, I was in that project, and I was not in a position where I could influence this, so I was also suffering from the same. Things happen. All right, so the problem with not having a skills focus is that employees tend to leave if they feel left out and they can't see a future in the company. They're not included. So they might leave, and you don't want your experienced people to leave because they have all the experience from the mess you had before. They know all the things about it, how it works. So you don't want them to go. Second, you don't have enough experienced cloud experts in the market because honestly, folks, we already have a job. We are not available. So if you have lots of people out there who are experienced, you can't get them unless you have a lot of money. That might be a thing, but and third, if you're going to the cloud with not enough experienced people, that will be two things. It will be a slow approach. You won't have fast progress to the cloud. You want to go there quickly to get that business agility benefit thingy in the cloud, right? But you can't go quickly if you don't have the right skilled people, because they have to Google everything, and that's a problem. And also, you're going to miss the mark. You're going to go to the cloud eventually. You're going to get some results, but it's not going to be the result that you really thought that you were going to get. You're going to get something, but it's going to be slower and more expensive, right? So the company that supports an employee skills transition here, and we're actually building a cloud-first strategy for my customer right now. And it was also, the draft was very technical. And I said, please stop. You have to put key activities in there. And one key activity has to be skills. You have to have it in the strategy. If you don't have it in the strategy, this is going to be so much harder for you. And that's why we're putting it in the strategy now. So this time I had the opportunity to actually influence this. So set training goals, support study circles, invite inspirational industry experts. Like you could invite me, and I'm just joking, but anyone who has experience to show the path, what can be done, how should we use the cloud, and why are we doing this again, right? And make sure that people can come along. I don't know if I've hammered on this too much now, but I don't think we can talk about this too much. I don't think it's possible. So I just want to make a brief reflection on this concept that you probably have heard. You've heard you build it, you run it. So you build it, you run it is the notion that if you have an application team building a service or an application for a company, they also are responsible for running the same, like taking care of that it actually runs. Okay, so as a modern cloud developer, there are some things that you should know. And the list goes on. So again, this is also a long list of things that you should know if you're running applications in the cloud. And again, I want to blur that out. It's not important exactly which things, but just please know that there are many things. Operations, there's how do we move the data to the cloud? Is it appropriately scaled? Auto scaling, what's that? How does that work? And are we compliant? There are so many things that you have to know about the application that runs in the cloud. So it's clear that you build it, you run it, works for maybe an individual team. Maybe you can have, I don't know if you've heard that 10x developer, the one developer who is 10 times more valuable than the others. That's a unicorn. That person doesn't actually exist. But if you could maybe possibly have a 10x team, you have one awesome team, please never let any one of those leave. Make sure that they want to stay, give them money, and then hopefully other benefits, and they'll stay. So you build it, you run it, works well on individual teams, but you cannot scale it through the enterprise because you don't have enough people available. So that model does not scale. I don't advise people to use you build it, you run it at scale because it doesn't work. So you don't have enough people for that. But you might get them over time, but you want to get to the cloud now. So you need a skills plan. You need team reorganization. You need a team composition plan. You need to invest time at this. and there's a risk that you're going to the cloud with not enough crew. You're going to you're not going to find your way to the cloud, and your approach will not be fast enough. So those are the risks involved with not having the organizational alignment that you need to have, and not understanding how important that is. So in summary, this is a good time to take a screenshot. So HR must be involved. Business case needs to be complete as per the understanding that we have right now. Okay, if we understand more about the cloud later, maybe, and here's a good example of that. You're going to the cloud to save money, and you're going to bring your customers. It's very expensive, this IT infrastructure we have. We're going to set the application up in the cloud, and it's going to be more optimized, and we're going to save money, and we're going to bring the customers over there. Brilliant. Except now all of a sudden the customer asks, well, what about compliance? What about security? You thought that your plan was to save money. That was the original strategy. That's what you wanted to do. You want to be able to service more customers with less money from your end. That's a good plan, or that's a good focus for a strategy. Common one. But now it turns out that you actually have to also be very secure in the cloud, also be very compliant in the cloud, and you have to prove that to your customers. Otherwise, they can't come along. Now you maybe have to move compliance and security up the priority scale. And guess what? Maybe it won't be cheap anymore. So there, because now you have to train your people and get them to understand how to use Sentinel and how to deploy the proper policies and how to actually deploy infrastructure that can actually live with these policies. And what? Wait a minute, what are you saying? So you thought it was money, but then it turns out that there was a bit more, and now it's more expensive than you thought. So you need to evaluate new features that you are going to use in the cloud, before they enter that cloud plan. If somebody comes, if technical people comes and says, oh, we've been using SQL Server forever, but there's this cool database in the cloud called a Cosmos DB. It's a graph database, and it's so cool. And wait a minute, does this thing, whatever it is, could be Cosmos. Cosmos is great, so it's probably the answer, like Kubernetes. But how do we know that that's still going to be the right thing to do? And that's when you go back to the plan, you go back to the strategy, and you go back to the strategy is highly likely not going to say that, but you go back to your planning and see, does this change align with what we need to do? Maybe moving to a Cosmos database can bring us great business value, because now we're using a graph database, but maybe we have to rebuild our data plane. And do we have time for that? And how much is that going to cost? Business time cost valuation thing. Is it the right thing to do now? Or do we have to continue to use the data plane that we have for a while, and then maybe have a small team figuring out what's the real plan for actually going to move the data plane to a different kind of database. So please have a strategy review board that understands how to review the plan, the strategy, and change the strategy if you have to. And then involve everyone in that strategy review board, because if you change the strategy, maybe you should tell HR, maybe they have to focus on different things now in the skills development of the employees of the company. All right. So I've been going for a long time. I'm just going to start rounding off here, because I know it may be a lot to listen to me yammering on or blabbering on for this long. The hosts are really patient with me and allowing me to talk as much as I like. And I like talking, but I want to make sure that you also are, like to listen. So once upon a time, there was this person I worked with, the CTO of a company, and they were debugging their cloud thing. So the CTO said, turn off the auto scaling in production, because we have a problem in production and we have to troubleshoot and we have to stabilize. We can't have auto scaling happening while we try to nail down this problem, because then we won't be able to grasp this problem. Sounds like a decent thing to do, but I was against this. I said, this is going to be way too expensive for you. This is not going to be fun for you. Please trust me. 5 months later and counting, the Azure Enterprise Agreement that this company had for 12 months was now spent. They spent 12 months worth of original budgety thing in about 7 months. So they were missing 5 months at the end there. And now you have a problem. The problem is that you're sitting there doing technical things in the development department, and all of a sudden down the hall, you hear this person come click, clock, click, clock, click. Who's wearing dress shoes in the development department? Everyone here wears sneakers. Who is this click clocking in the hall? Well, it's the CFO. He comes walking down the corridor, a stack of printed paper in hand, and apparently a banana. And then he's very upset, and he's like whacking the papers on the desk and like, explain all of this cost to me. Why is the cloud so expensive? This is costing us too much. What? Well, then now it's too late. Now the damage is done. So you have to look at this problem, look at this scenario. This really happened. This was millions spent, trying to figure out the production problem. What were the real problems here? So they had been inflicted with what is known as environment drift. Okay, they didn't know that, but that was a technical problem they had. They thought that production was the same as test, but because humans were deploying things and they weren't using automation enough, and the wrong people had the wrong access to the wrong thing, somebody thought it was a good idea to change something somewhere at some point. And now the production and the test environment didn't look the same. They thought that they were the same, but they were not. Okay, and so they were effectively chasing ghosts. They were not able to grab a hold of these ghosts because they were testing things in the wrong environments, and things were a mess. So this whole thing that, we will do this automation, we will use infrastructure as code, but not right now because the business is more important. We have to move the things now, and then we'll figure out that automation and that infrastructure as code stuff later, tomorrow. And also, oh, by the way, we're going to migrate away from those infrastructure servers and innovate and do that PaaS thing, except maybe not right now. Business is business critical, mission critical. We have to save money in the cloud, so we have to move everything up to the cloud now to save that money. Anyone see the kink in this plan? Right? There's a problem here. But the less technical people didn't know. They pushed IT to do the wrong thing. So time squeeze. Push to migrate, avoid the difficult customer conversation, because they had customers who said that we don't want change in our service. We were on the VMs before, and if we move us to the cloud now, how do we know that things will actually work in the cloud? Well, it turns out they had a performance issue with the PaaS service in the cloud, and so they were trying to debug that, and everything was a mess. So the real problem was that business didn't understand IT, and IT didn't stand up to business. And much later, many millions, this was now a problem. So I've actually created an anti-pattern on my own. I didn't create this image, of course, because this is Wile E. Coyote, as you can see. But there's this anti-pattern as well, almost flying in the clouds, which means that if you are going to fly in the clouds, it's challenging to actually fly. You might throw yourself out there and you don't know if you're going to fly or you're going to fall. Of course, Wile E. Coyote frequently always falls, but you don't want to be like Wile E. Coyote. You want to be much more assured that you can go to the cloud than that. And before let's see if just check here. I'm going to round off here, but I want to point out that a self-estimation in the same report that I referred to before said that people consuming a lot of cloud, company leaders consuming a lot of cloud, estimated that they might be spending, about a third of their spend is waste. About a third of the spend is waste. So they're not using auto scaling. They're using costly VMs. Maybe they should be using other things. They haven't done the reserved instance thing because they can't make the technical decision. They are struggling with the decision. Should we modernize this application, and how do we modernize this application? There's a team trying to modernize and they're trying to figure out move to the PaaS service, and they haven't figured it out yet. Are we waiting now? How long are we paying the premium on the VMs that we have? Should we get a 1 year reserved instance? But that means we're committing to a 1 year. Oh, this is so hard. Yes, it is hard. That's where you waste at least a third, maybe more. I don't know, but a lot of money. And also your business is not moving the way it should be moving. So you'll notice that commonly, it sounded like the PaaS service team were trying to figure things out, and they had technical challenges. They didn't have technical challenges. They had skills challenges. And so that's the real problem there. So I'm going to, I'm basically, I think we should stop now. I can go on. Like you wake me up in the middle of the night, and I'll talk about the cloud for, randomly. Just somebody wakes me up and I start talking about the cloud. My wife says that's really creepy when I do that, but that's who I am. I can talk about the cloud for weeks probably, and we should try to stop. I have some final pieces of advice that I want to talk about, and I can talk about that maybe with the team on screen with you guys. And if there are any questions, feel free to jump in, and we can talk.
That's great, Magnus. It's a very nice presentation. I really enjoy.
Yeah.
I think.
Any questions from the audience? Any questions from you? Any thoughts?
Yes. We had 2 questions from Bushra.
I move it to the screen. So
does Microsoft provide a team that helps with cloud adoption? I heard them promulgation and personalization plan. It can take a long time. I mean, it depends on who you are. It depends on what organization you are, and to make a proper plan and to actually go to the cloud it can be daunting. It can be really challenging. And sure, if you are, it always comes down to how big is your company. If you're a huge company and potential for your cloud spend is big. Microsoft also have people that will come and help you. They will help you make the plan. They will sit down with you. They will guide you along, because Microsoft wants you to consume a lot of their services. Oh, guess what, right? Big surprise. But they want to get you as a customer. And yes, they have people that can come and help you. You should reach out to Microsoft. And if you're a much smaller company, then they might, patiently point you towards like self-learning or advise you to get some training. You might not get the same level of attention. No, Microsoft wants small customers as well, of course. So yeah, the answer is kind of yes.
Amazing. Also, we have another question from Bushra. So,
which is the most common cloud service companies prefer to move to the cloud, and which cloud service would you recommend? Ooh, interesting. Kubernetes. Now, did you enjoy the Kubernetes joke? Was that a
yeah, it was really interesting.
Because everybody's like, well, the answer is Kubernetes. What's the question? So Kubernetes is cool. However, I'm a big platform service fan, right? So I'm gonna can I just 2 minutes short anecdote here, or a little fact, little thing that statistics maybe that you don't know. So cloud providers, Microsoft, all the other ones as well, they have figured out that if they make you, customer, consume 5 services in their platform or more, so we go app service, database, storage, key vault, and application insights, 5. Okay, well, basically that's it. Statistically, you're not going to leave. You're now staying because you've invested. You've invested in learning about these things, and you've started to consume them, and you are using, them for mission critical applications. You are very unlikely, statistically highly unlikely at this point, to leave the cloud platform. You're going to stay. And that's just by the numbers. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Okay, anyway, if you're very big, then maybe you're likely to have a multi-cloud thing, right? Maybe because that's what you need to have, or because you have, different companies in your organization. One was using AWS, and another one was using Azure, but that's a different story. But and these clouds are kind of frenemies up there. But statistically, 5 services. That's it. So which one would I prefer? So I will always suggest a platform service. Okay. I was in the cloud from the beginning when it was called Windows, right? It was called Windows Azure to begin with. They didn't have any Linux VMs in the cloud. They also didn't have a VM offering in the cloud to begin with, because Microsoft started using the cloud offering from Microsoft. The first one was a cloud service, or it's called a hosted service back then. You could deploy your application to this service. The service was, of course, a VM, but you didn't have a VM. You had an application, right? It was a platform service. That was the first thing that Microsoft started with. And that's when I got interested in the cloud. And I have been doing a lot of development with a lot of focus on platform services. And so I love platform services. And that is also the way, again, to move away from having your applications on VMs and taking them up to the cloud to be more innovative, and drop that notion of the VM, because nobody cares about the VM. Kubernetes, and nobody cares. All we wanted to do was run a business, a performant, cost optimized, secure, compliant application in the cloud. Nowhere did we say we also want to have a VM. Yes, there's a VM, but I don't care. So I will always suggest a platform service. Now, among the platform services, my favorite is the app service. Couldn't be simpler. It couldn't be easier. All I want to do is run an API or a web application, whatever it is, put it in a platform service. If you can get away with using the app service, that's going to be the easiest and fastest. And probably the learning curve for app service is not that steep. So go for that, is my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And it's part of this presentation that you mentioned. Sometimes you do not need to migrate your actual servers to cloud. Maybe you need to have some consideration about you need to adopt those services to cloud. And one of these things is related to app services, which is
exactly
great. I love them.
Yeah, absolutely true. So that's usually the case. Should I show real quick my final advice?
Yes,
we can talk about it together, though. You can stay on,
sure.
and just see if we can align everybody and have cool. Final advice, some final advice. So you don't have to use the cloud for everything. Every application shouldn't be running on the cloud, but you have to use the cloud for development and testing, right? You must. This is the pretty well-known Netflix chaos monkey, who they let loose inside of the Netflix system in production even, and who he likes to unplug things and take services down here and there. They had this service that just makes sure that everything we build is resilient and can recover from a problem. And how the way to do that is actually just unplug something and see what happens, right? Now, development and test. There is no excuse for not running those things in the cloud, because at the end of the day, you can turn everything off and the cost goes to zero. And you can use anything. If you want to develop something that's going to run on a VM, well, launch a VM in the cloud and develop and test your thing on that. And then, of course, starting to test it where it's supposed to run in production, if that is on premises. That can be the case, and not everything goes into the cloud, but many things do. But the point is, you can elaborate your thinking and test and try anything using a cloud platform. So you kind of have to do that. Okay. And you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, of course.
I'm talking to some cloud people. They're like, no, Magnus, you're wrong.
I kill you.
Of course, that's easy, I guess. All right, moving on. This is kind of a saying. This is the thing that I take with me in the work that I do for customers in the cloud. So again, with the skills thing and being kind and patient with people who don't have the cloud skills. They have IT skills. They have knowledge about the business. They know a lot of things, except none of those things really is how to run things in the cloud. And therefore, as the cloud platform person or the person taking care of governing the cloud and enabling other people to like, come along, we're going to show you how to do this. It's easy. You deploy a cloud service here and put the application there. You want to give them a safe space. Remember that image I had with the platform team underneath? That's a really good thing to have. A team that focuses on making it easy for everyone to do the right thing in the cloud. There's this notion of something called guardrails, which is policies and things that you can set up for the landing zone. I'm using many different cloud terms here, but effectively you give someone a subscription in the cloud, and that's called a landing zone. And then within that subscription, they can start to deploy, I don't know, virtual machines and databases and things. But maybe you set a cap and say, okay, you can deploy virtual machines, but you can't deploy this huge, massive sized, very expensive virtual machine. There's a policy that blocks that. Maybe we have another policy that says you're not allowed to put databases with our customer data in Southeast Asia. They have to be in Europe. That's another policy. So those are guardrails. But that's not only technical boundaries, but you also want to allow them self-service, allow them to get things and learn how to do things and take them along and show them and make it easy for them to do the right thing. That should be the focus for the cloud experts who are helping people with less cloud experience to gain cloud experience. They should feel that it's easy. And that's a good focus to have.
Yeah, amazing. And one thing that I love that you mentioned regarding to non-technical people, because I think it's a very important part that as a cloud architect, we have to be a kind of a storyteller. We need to interpret, the all technical aspects and show them as a kind of story. Then they can understand what exactly is and what we are going to do regarding this migration or adoption.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And the final, sorry?
Yeah. Go on, Magnus. It's okay.
Just one more thing, but you say her first. And
I just wanted to mention following Said's comments. So these are really precious topics that you shared. So could be gained during like more than 5 years or 10 years of experience that you shared here. These are really precious, and every day we are facing with business from project to project, especially the skill. Skill people, professionals, and HR stuff that you mentioned here. These are really important things that every business, every project that they deal with it. So there is some kind of confusion, and so I believe that this presentation would help many people.
I think so, because we think that it is a technical challenge. It is not a technical challenge. It is the other things that are going to be challenging. But you don't. Right. If you underestimate the other challenges, you will also not succeed with the technical challenge. So there's that. And the final thing that I love to also stress or point out that I think is so important, because it is priceless, and it is accountability. So accountability is priceless. And what do I mean by that? Well, if people feel that they have a responsibility, and if people feel that they are empowered, and if people feel safe, and that they can work in this environment, this cloudy environment that feels odd and strange, and I don't know, how do I monitor that? And this is weird. But if they can get empowered and feel also that they are accountable also for their cost, for example, set a budget. There's something called Azure budgets, and very few people actually use them. Why don't we use them? There's a funny saying there, that the worst thing that could possibly ever happen to your application, you know what that is? The very worst thing? It's success. Because obviously your architecture was not built for that success. So now you have a huge problem. And I think that's a fascinating way of looking at it. But if you have a budget for things, and if you're looking at the numbers that see how many users and what's the performance and what does this cost, you're empowering people to be accountable. And if they feel accountable, they're going to want to try to hit the limitations and like stay within the boundaries of the cost. And if it's going to cost more, then hopefully it's because of success. That's cool. And it's not because somebody left a VM online somewhere that should be deleted, and that's just wasting money. So if people feel like they are empowered, safe, and get some responsibility, they will feel accountable, and accountability is priceless.
Exactly. Very true.
Yeah. Okie dokie. So, are we about at the end of this thing?
Yeah, I think it's the 1.5 hour that we are here.
I mean,
and
we're headed up to here.
No.
But I can't take it anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
as
was
we
lovely.
mentioned, we can sit and enjoy the content that you are sharing with us and also the information. But yeah, it's a kind of webinars are always different than seminars and conferences.
Yeah,
But
I know. It
yeah,
would have been so much more fun to sit around a table and talk about these things, go back and forth with other people's anecdotes. But again, I'm
But what
talking
I-
to I'm talking
Yeah.
to this little black dot up here.
I love the way you mentioned that we can talk it for hours. There's no a limit, like talking about this stuff, like from the technical stuff themselves to architecture to business and so on. So there's no limit.
Yeah.
We can talk hours.
Yeah.
I know. I can like again this joke, right? If you wake me up in the middle of the night, I'll randomly start talking about the cloud. It's kind of almost true.
That's true.
I'll be like Kubernetes.
Yeah. Actually, we have another question.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you think
Do you think clients will
leave?
leave the clouds in 10 years? No, I do not think that. I think we are moving ever more towards a place where the server, compute, that's ubiquitous. We don't care. Honestly, I think we're going to, if anything, move more towards a place where architecturally it doesn't matter where it runs. All I want is for my application to have this amount of performance, this amount of capacity, and handle this much of our business. And it should be, there's a cost constraint at the end there, and I can scale and I can do a few things. I don't care if that's a Linux VM or a Windows VM or anything else. I don't care if that's a platform service or even if it's on a VM or if it's in Kubernetes or where it is. All I want is the application to run for my business. And we have been moving as an industry towards that notion architecturally and technically for a good long time now. And my understanding is that this will continue. That's what I see. Exactly. So more of it, not less, is my understanding. And those who are, and maybe to answer the concern, I think maybe there was something in there for the person who asked the question. We've seen a couple of cloud exits or regression, like they take things away. Well, the reason that they're doing that is because they were promised so many things with the cloud. And then when they go there, they realize that it is more difficult than they thought. It is more expensive and it is complicated, and we missed the mark. And the cloud probably isn't very good because we're very good, and we couldn't do it. And that means that the cloud has somehow is broken. And we're now going back and we're making a public show to try to save face, trying to suggest that the problem wasn't us, the problem was the cloud. When in fact, the problem was their strategy, their plan, their approach, their organizational change, and the things that we've talked about today, right? But they just don't want to admit that they just burned a bunch of money.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. But yeah, perfect. Two things. As we have a plan always, we select the best question, and we giving out voucher with 50% discount on Microsoft Fundamental exams. So basically, we had questions from two persons. One was from Bushra and the other from, if I'm not mistaken, 10, something like this. And which question was the best?
You're asking me?
Yes, because you need to
choose one question.
I get to judge now. Oh my goodness.
I can show the questions again.
Yeah, but I didn't. So I like the. That's no, not that one. That was okay, but I think this one is cool. This one is a good candidate. This one is very nice. No, I think the one before. That's the one. This is the winner.
Okay, so Bushra, you're the winner. We will contact you and we will give you the voucher by email. So thank you so much. I don't know if Magnus has time, but I will try to invite him again, maybe next month, maybe for, I don't know, after June, July, I don't know, because he's pretty busy. So then maybe.
But we all know.
We will love to have another session to hear your experiences.
Yeah.
We'll
And
talk
also
about
maybe
it.
another session to learn more about the chili tattoo.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about chilies. The next session will be on capsicum and Scoville scale and stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Magnus, and wish you a great weekend. So yeah, next
Appreciate
week.
this, guys. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Love
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Next week we will have another session, guys. So I hope to see you all there. So yeah, that's all. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
everyone.
Thank you.
Great weekend. Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.